Now I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Shankar Sastry, the Dean of the College of Engineering, who will introduce this evening's guest of honor.
Thank you, Cynthia. And a good evening to you. It's the longest evening of the year, so happy summer solstice. I am just simply delighted to introduce our 2015 Alumnus of the Year, Steve Wozniak. The best way to describe Woz, in a nutshell, is to take a look at the title of his memoir, published in 2006. It's called I Was, From Computer Geek to Cult Icon, How I Invented the Personal Computer, Co-Founded Apple, and Had Fun Doing It. I want to call your attention to the last clause. I had fun doing it. Spend even just a few minutes with Woz, and you'll quickly see that having fun is really important to him. And it turns out that having fun is important to game-changing innovation as well. Just yesterday, the New York Times ran a 1976 photo of Woz with his huge smile to make a point about the freewheeling creativity and fearlessness that have made Silicon Valley's entrepreneurial culture the envy of the world. In a moment, we'll hear more from Woz in his own words. But let me mention just a few of his phenomenal life accomplishments. Steve Wozniak co-founded Apple Computer with Steve Jobs in 1976 and helped shape modern computing with his design of Apple's first line of products, the Apple I and Apple II. Later on, he took some time off from Apple to return to Berkeley to earn his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and computer science here in Berkeley. When he graduated in 1986, Rocky Clark, I think that was his name when he graduated, was also the commencement speaker, as I distinctly recall, at his commencement. So it was just wonderful to see him sort of dash across from one end of the stage to the other to get his diploma. And when the Los Angeles Times asked him why a college degree mattered so much to him, given that he had already made millions of dollars, Woz replied, "I was not thinking in terms of external rewards. If you think in a purer sense, if you learn a lot, you'll be successful in life." In 1987, Woz left full-time employment with Apple to found a new venture, CL9, which developed the first programmable universal remote control. A little pre-runner to the Nest Technologies, maybe, Yoki. And in 2001, he started Wheels of Zeus, that's Wheels of Zeus, W-O-Z, to create wireless GPS technology. Woz has always been passionate about education. As his career advanced, he steadily increased his involvement with schools and with his alma mater. He's been a fifth grade teacher. He's been a judge for kids' robotic competitions. He even adopted the Los Gatos School District, providing students and teachers with resources to promote computer literacy, hands-on learning, and now he was telling me about broadband access. Here at Berkeley, Woz's philanthropy helped us build Soda Hall, a computer science building, and his advanced teaching and research in many other ways. We are proud to acknowledge him as a builder of Berkeley. He serves on our College of Engineering Advisory Board, and he's always very happy to meet with our students whenever he's asked. He's been recognized with several awards. I'll just mention a few. President Reagan awarded him the National Medal of Technology. The IEEE ACM gave him the Grace Murray Hopper Award, one of the highest awards in computer science, and multiple honorary doctorates. He's been inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame and the Consumer Electronics Hall of Fame. I imagine he was especially delighted to see the street in front of San Jose Children's Discovery Museum renamed Woz Way in his honor. Let us now spend a few minutes with our 2015 Alumnus of the Year, Steve Wozniak. Steve, please join me on the stage.
Hi.
By the way, I must congratulate you on your outfit, especially the shoes.
Yeah. Well,
Please note
you know
the
what?
blue and gold sneakers.
Yeah. If I was in a tuxedo, I'd be wearing these blue and gold shoes. I paint them. I choose the colors myself online. I wear them every single day. You know, you were talking about fun. I'll show you. I pick up these little $6 devices everywhere I go that make me a lot of fun. You know, like this laser pointer up here. But I was wondering what would happen if I put it through my head from one ear to the other. Would it diverge the beam differently because of DNA? Let's try it. Go ahead. Your turn.
I have a feeling I don't need to ask the questions here. When you found out you were Berkeley's Alumnus of the Year, what was your reaction?
This was unbelievable. I never thought I would get it. It was like the highest honor in the world I could ever possibly get, but I just wouldn't get it. There's too many Nobel Prize winners, theoretical physicists, people that took their brain so much further, and I was a practical, applicable guy. So everyone asks me, what's the proudest moment of your life? And I always say it, my graduation day at Cal. Every time I get asked that. So now this honor is number 2.
And your experience as a Cal student was an unusual one. You enrolled at Cal after co-founding Apple. Why did you choose to return to Berkeley?
You know, education was important to me, the value of the mind in society, the importance of it. I had always thought that's what was going to get me somewhere in life. I had spent my life trying to study and think hard ways to use devices and building blocks in ways that were never done before and come up with unusual answers better than other people. So my schooling, all 16 years plus of schooling, you know, equated to something. My parents told me what colleges they went to. And we started our computer companies without degrees because it was interesting and we knew we had something and we're onto something hot. But if Apple hadn't happened, I would have gotten my degree. So I wanted to return again. I wanted to be able to tell my kids, someday when I had kids, I wanted to be able to tell them what school I went to.
Fantastic. I've heard you talk about...
And my third year had been at Berkeley, and that was, you know, it's always been the top school in the top university in the world, in my mind, for the ways I think.
You know, over the years, I've heard you tell lots of stories about your time here. Would you care to share some of the more colorful ones?
Well, I had a lot of fun here, but I'm going to tell a couple unusual stories besides blue boxes that could make free calls from the dorms anywhere. And I was lucky I paid for my own phone calls, so I never got arrested, but I was probably that close. But
that's what you said at commencement, I remember.
Yes, and my college roommate wrote a 9-page paper for English and got an A on it called Fiction about a guy named Alfonso, but it was all true about what I'd done that year. But that was the fun side, but I'll tell you a couple unusual things. We had to punch computer cards in those days on the key punches, and at finals time, you'd have to wait 40 minutes to get on the key punch for one trial of your program and then get the error messages and correct it and wait another 40 minutes. There were 2 unused key punches of another type. And I loved typing so much ever since high school. I would type term papers from midnight till 6 in the morning for people here at Berkeley and charge them 5 cents because I loved typing that much. But I totally touch typed. Even in those days, the key punches, you had to type special characters like asterisks and all with 2 fingers of the left hand, and nobody touch typed them. They just looked and used 2 hands. I did everything that way. I went over to those other key punches. If I typed by touch, they printed the wrong characters, but they punched the right holes for what I wanted, so I beat the system. Yeah, I was kind of proud of that. It's out of the box thinking.
But Steve, I've heard it be told that you'd go to these big lecture rooms that all of us alumni love about Berkeley, and I heard you had devices that could turn screens on and off, and you know, in the PSL and all of those. What was that?
I don't recall if I ever used those here at Cal because I had already had a lot of time using them elsewhere. And where I did use them, yes, it was at a university my first year. You know, I flew out of state. Berkeley was a place I should have gone. I was top student and 800s on the SATs and all that, and could design any computer in the world in 2 days. I should have gone here. I flew out to a place where it snowed. snowed. And I fell in love with snow first time in my life. So I went to University of Colorado the first year, but I went down to an electronics store, bought their highest speed transistor at Radio Shack, wound some coils, built some pieces in my hand, and I could, we only had one colored TV on campus. When I went to the colored TV downstairs in the women's hall where we watched it, I tuned it on and it fuzzed up the picture, yeah. And then my friend of mine whacked the TV, and I made it go good. And then every so often I would make it bad and he'd whack it harder and harder and it would go good. And people learn. People have brains, so they learn. So they wound up stationing one person in a chair next to the TV for weeks. And whenever it went bad, it was his job to whack it or tune the fine tuning. And then I discovered I'd make it go good, and when he pulled his hand away, it'd go bad. Good, bad. So I should have gotten my degree in psychology because I started playing with their bodies. I would get them to stand on chairs holding the antenna up or put a hand in the middle of the screen with a foot off the floor on a chair. And if they put the foot down or moved the hand, the TV got fuzzed. So I had a lot of fun. Yeah, and I would take them to some large classes and make the microphone go on and off, and the teacher would finally give up on using the mic.
And there was a story about you having a phone number with one digit off from some airline reservation.
Oh. No, yes, I collect a lot of, I like number games, little puzzles. They're really good for teaching kids too, and play a lot of games with my wife. We play with numbers on license plates and all, but I've collected good phone numbers all my life, and you could never get 7 digits the same, like 8888888. You could never get that in San Jose because the San Jose area code was 408 then, way down south, and way up north was 415, and they didn't share any numbers, and San Francisco had all the good ones. But that changed in the days of modems. But I got a number 2211111, one of the most special numbers in my life in the old days of analog cell phones that almost nobody had. 2211111 in 408. What's special about that? Remember the old rotary dial phones? 1 is the shortest distance, 2 is the next. There is no other number legally assignable in the United States other than 2211111 that has the shortest distance your finger has to move. But I got a lot of calls every day from strangers hanging up. And then one day I was booking a flight for myself, and I saw that Pan Am had 800-221-1111. What? So the next caller that called in, they were hanging up. I said, "Are you calling Pan Am?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, we were on a lunch break. What can I do for you?" I wound up for the next 3 years answering every phone call. Pan Am International Desk, Greg speaking, and my friends would say, Steve, it's me, it's a friend. And I would book the phoniest flights I could think of, and then I'd tell them it was a prank so I wouldn't get arrested, because the police could easily set me up. And I came up with the Grasshopper Special, where I tell them you can fly up to Billings, Montana, down to Amarillo, Texas, up to Moscow, Idaho, out to Lexington, Kentucky, and then to Boston. That's the cheapest fare. And I told them the Gambler Special. People bought this. I would be so legitimate in my voice. I learned to speak like an actor. What's the Gambler Special? They'd say, well, you fly to Las Vegas and you roll the dice. If you get a 7, the next leg is free. And they bought it. They bought these things.
You know your fondness for repeated digits. Your first Apple was $666.66,
and that came from my phone numbers. And now my phone number in 408 is 888-8888. I finally got it. I couldn't use it for 20 years because I got 100 calls from little babies pushing the 8 button. Couldn't use that number. Now they have to dial 10 digits, and that stops the babies.
Now that we're talking about Apple, can you tell us about these early days at Apple? What was it like when you were starting this iconic company?
Okay. There were ideas. There were young people and scattered people and technical people that knew a little about computers, thinking, wow, we can have our own computer. It'll make us special in the world. We had professors. We had people from Berkeley and Stanford in our homebrew computer club talking about the social drive, that people were going to be able to communicate so fast by typing things into a modem that a message for like an anti-war march in Oakland, 100 people could read it within an hour. 100 people. Okay, this was an amazing idea to me, the social ideas. Education was going to be so important because students would be given a problem, type an answer, and be told right or wrong instantly. An instant reward or punishment matters a lot. You don't hit your dog on the head 12 hours after it poops, right? On the floor. No. So I was, and the geek would be so important. And so my role, I was driven by the social drive, which is what attracted me to Berkeley too. A lot of the social connections. And my talents were to build the device that could do it. And I'd always wanted my own computer. I told my dad I would own my own computer someday, a little mini computer with an input-output. And he said, it'll cost as much as a house. And I said, I'd live in an apartment. I was going to have it. Well, now I saw the formula of parts, prices that had come down, and the whole get-together, saw it in one night and built that computer. Yeah, that was, so I forget what the question was, but that's sort of the answer. Oh, starting
Well,
Apple.
it's great.
So
It's
that
great.
leads. Okay,
It doesn't
now
matter. The questions don't matter.
Starting Apple. Starting Apple's a story that's really told very incorrectly in the movies. I mean, they show Steve Jobs taking me to a computer club. Steve was out of town in Oregon. He wasn't near. He didn't know that there was a club. He didn't know that I had built a computer. He didn't know that I had given away my design to everybody because I wanted these people to build their own computers and spur the social revolution. And I had helped others build their own copy of my computer. And Steve came into town. I said, "You got to see this." And I took him down to the club. And I was a hero there. People would surround me with my demonstrations and everybody looking over my shoulder saw the formula for a personal computer. The keyboard, the TV display, and it only takes this many chips if you use the right type. So anyway, we went off to start a company. Steve's idea was at first was not even to start a computer company. They show him as this whiz. He's thinking computers will benefit mankind. And he just wanted to build a $20 PC board and sell it for $40 because he'd worked in surplus electronics selling parts. And for 5 years, we'd been selling my little inventions for video games and things like that. We'd been selling them as partners. So I wouldn't start a company. By the way, I wouldn't start a company and leave my company behind. It's just like my loyalty to Berkeley. My loyalty to Hewlett-Packard, where I worked, was that strong. I was designing calculators without a college degree, but Berkeley class background was good enough to get me in. So I wouldn't do it. And Hewlett-Packard turned me down 5 times for that computer. I just wanted them to build it. 5 times total got turned down. So Steve and I were in business, and then right away we got an order for $50,000. My salary was $25,000 at Hewlett-Packard as an engineer. $50,000. Whoa! Building complete computer boards and being paid cash at a store. We had no money, no bank accounts. You know, when you're young, even in college, you don't have money. And we had no savings accounts. We had no relatives with money. So we'd get the parts on 30 days credit, get the computers built fast, and we didn't do any work in the garage. We didn't any product conceptualization, engineering, design, prototyping, manufacturing, business in the garage. Steve did the business on the phone in his bedroom. But so we would take the computers about 1 day a week, bring some computers from where they were built into the garage, test them, and then drive them down to the store and get paid cash. Yeah. We had 30 days to pay, and we got paid cash for the computers. And that was what's called the garage day, but that wasn't the real company. Then we got an investor for the real company, the product that was going to change the world, give us a 6-color logo. I had thought up a way to do color with one digital chip where every engineering book in the world had a $1,000 method using all these analog parts. And I knew that it would work because I knew television signals so well from my analog days of electronics. So we knew we had a hot product, and we got an investor. And the investor was a mentor. He'd had success in business. He told us what positions you needed to set up a company, who you hired, what their roles would be. He owned as much of the stock as Steve Jobs and myself. And he really is the one who built Apple, but he didn't want to be known. So he took us to an agency, and they came up with the idea of, let's make it 2 guys in a garage like Hewlett and Packard. It was kind of a made-up story, partly, about the garage. They tried to talk us out of the name Apple, and Steve and I had to stand there and say, no, Apple's a good name in the homes and the schools and places computers are going to go now. We had to fight them on that, and they came up with the logo, and we went with the color, and we brought color to the world of computing. And in those days, Atari making video games, another important market, they were all black and white. They were all hardware designs, no software. The Apple II was a whole step to make them color and software and even programmable in BASIC by a 10-year-old. Yeah, that was a big, so that was going to be the product, yeah. That was Apple's only successful computer and product for bringing in all the revenues for the first 10 years of Apple.
You know, a lot of what you said is, of course, legend, and so it's just wonderful to hear it from you. You know, but tell me a little bit, you know, this homebrewed club which you talked about where you first did these, and your vision about how it was important to freely disseminate designs. And, you know, this is...
But there was no big money yet. We didn't give away the Apple II design. The Apple I I had given away before Steve even knew it existed, yeah, but no, the Apple II, my engineer friends at Hewlett-Packard were saying, this is the best product I've ever seen in my life. We knew we had the start of something big and huge, and, you know, now this one was so huge we needed to find money.
Yeah. That's great. So, what do you see now as these big changes in Silicon Valley culture? Are there big changes today from 30 years ago?
Yeah, Silicon Valley's becoming a little vague term because Silicon Valley was down in the San Jose area, and it was a lot of hardware companies, starting with the early chip companies, because inventor of the transistor, William Shockley, who in a later year was not allowed to speak on the Berkeley campus, not allowed free speech because leftists didn't like some of his ideas about, I don't know, whatever, sterilizing blacks. Bad ideas, but he should have been allowed to speak. But he moved to Mountain View, California. Silicon Valley grew up down there of electronics companies, lots of, starting with the transistors and the chips and what you could build out of them, and Lockheed was down there. Now it's software. We're in a software world where the software and third-party apps on iPhones are changing our life more than the products, more than the iPhone itself. The biggest invention of my life has been the third-party app store. And what it led to was new forms of taxis and ways to get movies and reservations at restaurants and stuff. They're all moving up the bay, the peninsula, towards San Francisco. So it's hard to call Silicon Valley one place, but they keep getting called Silicon Valley. Everywhere I go in the world, every country, every city has enthusiastic people wanting to figure out a way to get that formula and have their own Silicon Valley so they don't get left out of the future. They feel that is the future of development and the economies of the countries. So Silicon Valley today, I do run into a lot of younger people, more that came out of the business school than the engineering school in the old days. It was a lot more engineering driven. And now it's the business school. Here's a formula. I'll come up with an idea that people will want. And sometimes they miss a lot of steps, but I'll start a little company and then I'll sell it in 3 years so I can get enough money to move to San Francisco. And then I'll start my next company. And then well, that's not as pure as when we started. Steve and I never thought we wanted a company that was so great and it would be its own company with one name forever and ever. We would never have thought you can get acquired or anything like that. Never thought of doing, as a step to other companies, just as a step to better products that we would build. So I see that change a lot. And the young people that come out of business school alone really miss the boat a lot because they don't see that engineering is important. Let the engineers help define what your product is going to be as a company, what your company is going to be about, because engineers are used to solving problems, thinking deeply and coming up with answers that almost nobody else can come up with based on mathematics or whatever, their reasoning. And also you should always include someone who is a customer. In my case, I wanted a computer for myself, and I knew exactly what it had to do to be better than anything I could ever imagine, so I always made sure I was building it an excellent way. But sometimes you come up with a product, you think you know what other people want, and when it's time, I'll hire the engineers and we'll build it. Well, if you have somebody who wants to be one of those buyers, they tell you what's right and what's wrong and where it's difficult and it's easy and the user interface and how it could be done differently than before if you find the right sort of person that's an inventive type mind. So a lot of times they miss those steps in the new startup companies. Sometimes it's best if you can find all three qualities: wanting the product, wanting to do the business, being spirited towards all the steps to do a business, and being an engineer. You can find all three in one person, that's great, but usually it takes two or three.
Yeah. So, I just in listening to you now and also just thinking about Apple, one of the things that you held dear was just fantastic, elegant design.
Oh my gosh.
This 100, and I feel...
Why do you think I stepped up on the stage? Efficiency. Yeah. Engineering to me meant efficiency. Efficiency was a number you can calculate in a lot of engineering classes of output divided by input. You want to get the most out for the least in. What's the easiest ways? And I always thought about that my whole life. I tried to figure out ways to make computers on paper in my high school years. There were no computers around. There were no books on it. I had to teach myself how to design computers, kind of like I had to write a book, and it took months at first. But every weekend, I worked taking a computer design, maybe for a Hewlett-Packard computer, maybe a Varian computer, maybe a Digital Equipment, maybe IBM. And I would take that design, and can I save any parts? Can I do it more efficiently, make it with fewer parts? All my huge engineering skills came from that. When I worked at Hewlett-Packard designing calculators, handheld calculators in those early days, the PhDs over at HP Labs would call our division if they had a device with 57 transistors. They'd ask for Woz's help, and I'd do it in 11. It was just my way of thinking. You want to do, you absolutely want efficiency, but one of the best ways to get it is the architect who defines the architecture of a structure, a product, or a service, is also very familiar with the building blocks and knows how, among all the alternatives of architecture, to use the ones that takes the building blocks in the most efficient way. And cost reduction is more important than part reduction.
Yeah. So, I think now on Berkeley, on the campus, I feel there's a lot of interest in two things: entrepreneurism and design. design the juxtaposition.
It's sort of what
Yeah,
Steve
so-
Jobs talked about, the mixture of arts and engineering.
Yeah.
Well, Berkeley should be so proud. We've got one of my heroes went here, William Hung.
So tell me, moving on to other things.
Some of you know, so some of you get that one.
Okay, I'm going to take it a slightly different direction.
I know you were often.
I know you love to teach and worked as a fifth grade teacher. What do you do to get kids excited about STEM? Or whatever you want them to get excited about,
Well,
even if it's not STEM.
Yes, it was very important to me. The most important thing to me is creativity. It's and not what you learn in schools. Doing everything they can to not let you kind of think for yourself. A lot of things you have to do outside of school too. School gives you a lot of good basis to work from. Look at a master's project. Here's a project. You can take some courses that will give you the tools to complete it. So you work very much on your own, for a larger goal. And when I had classes, I thought, okay, first of all, they were very young students. I had a lifetime goal to teach fifth grade. I don't know where that goal came from, but it stayed in me. Even with Apple's success, I still wanted to do it. So I went back and did it secretly with no press for 8 years, wound up loving it so much I would teach 6th to 9th graders. I would teach groups of teachers. I would work up to 7 days a week, writing my own lessons, never out of a book, the way my high school electronics teacher had done. And I thought, first of all, you've got to build a lot of fun into it. You've got to have activities that include a lot of, this is fun too when I'm done. Or make it like projects. If it involves numbers and mathematics, try to make it with patterns and puzzle solving, and those sort of things that it can be used for, just to make it a little interesting and relevant. But it was important to teach some very strong basics, what kind of fonts to use and how to space things and how to use color correctly and not wrong, and graphics too, and all that stuff. No, it's just just trying to do a good job. I was teaching how to use computers for every school subject there is. And if the students were assigned a project to count the number of letters in a sentence, how many A's, how many B's, how many C's, I would go and show how you can do it with a spreadsheet. I just had fun. I didn't try to teach programming until about 7th grade. Because cognitive development, your head doesn't get to a stage called symbolic reasoning that you're ready for algebra until 12 years for most people. So earlier, many fewer people can do that sort of stuff. And these kids were just so outstanding. It was amazing. I could go back to the schools now, and they're still probably doing stuff by hand that they did on computers all that year.
What are you working on now? At least whatever you can tell us about it.
What am I working on now? Okay, first of all, after my last kid graduated from high school, I started saying yes to things and wrote a book, and I started a company with some Apple execs that went public, and then a friend of mine was calling me from all over the world speaking. And I said, wow, I'm jealous. And he says, and I hadn't used a passport in 10 years. I didn't like travel that much. But now I'm alone, and I said, I'd love to do that. And he said, well, my speech agent can get you speeches. So I do public speaking all over the world. Quite a bit. I'm also with a technology company that's working on enterprise storage. I was with Fusion.io that was changing hard disks into electronic chips. Being an electrical person, more than a mechanical engineer, I like that. Always favored that. And this company had an architecture that was different than everyone else was trying. Everyone else was building what's called a solid-state disk, and this company did something very different like what I did when I designed computer peripherals at Apple. They plugged it straight into the computer. Least cost, most efficiency, everything, and really changed the world. But now the founders of that company have a new one, and I'm with, and it's how storage of all the data that's within large companies chooses by itself where to reside at different times. Hard to describe. The company's called Primary Data, and we're semi-stealth right now. And what else? I'm also with an organization with one of those guys, and we formed a thing. We're bringing Comic-Con to Silicon Valley.
Wonderful.
Was bringing it, and to Japan, and we'll do more projects like that.
What life advice would you give to a current Cal student?
Life advice, well, obviously, the advice everyone, you're a current Cal student. You're still in an age where you have a chance of thinking out who you want to be, how you want to live, what principles you're going to be by, morals, ethics, how important truth is to you. You're at a chance that you can set your personality with how you deal with your friends at Cal, and it's going to stick with you for life pretty much once you leave the university. That's who you're going to be. So really try to give it some thought and say, what do I want to be? My father taught me when I was young, you know what? farther you go in life really depends upon how much people like you. At least your happiness comes from that. So I always wanted to be a likable person and not a fighting, conflicting type person. You know, use brain, try to help other people get more in life.
Wonderful. And and when you think about Berkeley and all the things that Mr. Coombs talked about,
He's a great speaker.
isn't he great? Yeah, I thought so too.
I wish I had that talent of of putting words together well. He gave, to me, Berkeley's so personal. I go to 2 places in the world now that I think of as, when I get there, I have this big feeling inside of me. I am at home. One of them is Sunnyvale, California, where I grew up, and the other is Berkeley. Whenever I get to town and near the campus, I don't know, I just have that warmth feeling. It's a place that belongs. Berkeley has a great history. Now, Berkeley has a great reputation, you know, top university stuff in all the records. It's so popular, especially in Asia. When I came back to school here, computer science was full of the brainiac country people, you know, and I think Berkeley has always stood for great social fairness and equality, you know, whether it's races or gender orientation, whatever. So that means a lot to me, you know, as well as the academic excellence. They go together. Berkeley is, a lot of schools are, you know, noted by their teams, and they just, you know, fight to have the great team every single year. And Berkeley's in there sometimes, but it's also the achievements of your alumni. The achievements of your graduates get noted as being very important to a university. I mean, the number of Nobel Prize winners here, I don't know where that comes from, but that's pretty impressive too. But when people leave the campus and they go start companies, Berkeley should do everything they can to give them the skills to, you know, achieve that kind of success, because that's what's going to get noted more than anything else as, wow, these guys came out of Berkeley. I want to go to that school. The smart people start thinking, you know, always think that way. Well, they always have.
Yeah. I should tell you, by the way, in terms of Nobel Prizes, you know, alumni are only slightly ahead of the faculty. But if you think about billion-dollar companies, I think the alumni have the faculty by a whole mile. So, you know, anyhow, you know, I've been asking you some random questions. Anyhow, it's just wonderful to listen to you. Any other things you'd like to share with us? Any reflections or final words that, you know, anything you'd like to talk about? It's just wonderful listening to whatever you have to say.
I don't know. The institutions of my life, all the schools, the cities, the different places that were a big part of me becoming something were so important to me. It's one of the reasons that with philanthropy, I really wanted to give back to them. And, you know, at the top of that list of all the institutions ever is always Berkeley in my mind. So, and I will share one story. A couple of years ago, Janet and I had a couple of our kids in University of Colorado, and they got put into the Pac-10. It became the Pac-12. And they were playing basketball, Colorado versus Berkeley one day, Colorado versus Stanford the next. So we went to the game here at Berkeley, and we're up in the nosebleed section. We went to Stanford. Somehow they spotted us, and they said, "Oh, Mr. Wozniak, you've got to come down to the front row of the athletic director's box." It's at Stanford at a basketball game. Of course, we're dressed in Berkeley colors, head to toe, rooting for Colorado.
So that's fantastic. You know, it's been really a wonderful conversation with you. I'm sure if we could let you go on, we'd be completely spellbound. But in the interest of making sure that we keep the program going, the California Alumni Association will now present you with your award. So I'll get off the stage here. The efficient way.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I am now delighted to officially recognize the Cal Alumni Association's highest honor, the 2015 Alumnus of the Year Award to Steve Wozniak, class of 1986. Please join me in a warm round of applause.